All right. So, welcome to BAM Education. Today, we are talking about the transaction flow and working with buyers. And the reason why I felt like this was important is because everything is always changing. And it's just great to refresh and remember the things that we may fall short on or just push past in a transaction. And we all have the different checklists that we like to go by on the buyer side or the listing side. So today is not a detailed transaction flow. I'm not going to tell you, okay, your next step is to now send that email. And then confirm you've received email. It's not going to be that detailed, but we are going to go ahead and get started with the presentation that I've prepared. I'm going to go ahead and hit present here. And let's see if I can share my screen. All right. I'm not sure what is happening, but I will get it together, guys. Promise. Here we go. All right. Hey, Ange, welcome. All right. I promise to one day have this all taken care of. Sharing my screen now. Um, in working with buyers, there are a lot of different things that we all do individually. And like I said, there's checklists for every detailed thing so that you don't miss something. But these are just some of the basic steps to remember how to present yourself and stay on top of things, and just some ethic type conversational things that we want to share with each other. Every agent is going to proceed differently. So if you're working with different mentors and then later on you kind of formulate your own little process, that's completely okay as well. All right. Um, as we get started, we want to talk a little bit about the buyer's consultation. Okay. When you receive a lead, it is like so easy, especially in the beginning, even when you're seasoned, you get so caught up in your eagerness to like get things going. And a lot of times the buyers are caught up in that as well. And they're like, let's just go see houses. But it's very important to control the dynamic, not in an overbearing, like I'm in charge kind of way, but in a way that you can make sure that the flow is a pleasant flow and it's systematic and you don't overlook things, right? So, the point of a buyer's consultation is to gather information and to share information. Um, it can be in person. I highly recommend it to be in person. I recommend that either way, whether it's in person, virtually, or over the phone, that it take place prior to your first showing. Okay. Because the information you gather and the information you share in your buyer's consultation is relevant to the process. So it's important to gather all of that and share it all in the consultation. So when you have your consultation, you want to make sure that you're meeting with all the decision makers, not just the wife, not just the husband. Not if it's like recently I had a transaction where it was mother and son. You can't really just meet with one because they are all going to be a part of it, and it will totally throw you off off step and put a wrinkle in the whole process if you are now suddenly getting new information from a decision maker halfway through or after you've seen 10 houses with them or whatever the case is. So definitely make sure that you're meeting with all of the decision makers. It doesn't have to be a super formal consultation. You can have a presentation on laptop if you feel comfortable. It can be a checklist on a note card that of things that you want to have conversations about. It can be a buyer's information sheet, and as you're going through the sheet and filling it out, it's prompting you to remember to discuss certain things. It can be in an office setting. As I said, it can be virtual through Zoom. It can be over the phone, FaceTime, or just a phone conversation. However, that feels and looks comfortable for you. Just remember that you are the professional. So try to make sure it feels like it's a purposeful consultation and conversation. You're creating a relationship. So you want to kind of make them feel at ease, but still get everything that you need out of it. So, you know, proceed however you feel the most comfortable, because that's how you're going to be able to make them feel at ease. But just remember that you're the professional. Some of the things that I like to discuss are what their goals are, why they are now in the process of buying a home, what have been some of their obstacles that have led them to this point, and, like in the end, where do they want to be? And so sometimes that involves like a conversation about um, what they want in a home and what they don't want in a home. So, like a do's and don'ts type of list. Um, you definitely are going to want to speak to them about their qualification and their purchase power, whatever that is. It could be cash. How are they going to proof those funds? Um, if they are qualified, who is the lender? Have they had past experiences with them? How did they meet that lender? And then, of course, get your lender information and keep it handy so that you then can afterwards have a conversation with that lender. There may be some things about that qualification that the buyers aren't really even sure they need to share with you, whether or not closing costs are needed. I know recently that not all lenders are including that on their pre-qualifications and their letters. Buyer needs assistance. So sometimes if you don't ask and have a conversation with them, you won't know until later that they're short funds, and that's going to be chaotic. So go over the steps in a transaction and how you're going to handle them. So when I say the steps, I like typically say, okay, so this is step one. You and I are meeting, yada, yada. Step two is I'm going to send you a subscription of properties for you to review. You're going to be able to review them casually and get back with me. And then once you have previewed them and we have a few properties for you to see, then we'll schedule a time to do so. After we see a home, and if you like it, we'll talk about contract. And these are some of the things you're going to need to have ready when the time comes. And so that type of process. You don't have to be super, super detailed, because remember, you don't want to overwhelm them, but you want to get the big bullet things in, like make sure you have escrow funds. How much do you have towards escrow? That's like a huge thing to know, even before you are showing homes, right? So those are some of the things that I like to include in a consultation. The last thing I put on this slide is a buyer's agreement. I feel like that is definitely a per agent preference. I know that there are very few in our brokerage that use buyer's agreements. However, if that's what you feel comfortable with, then please, of course, include that at that time in your buyer's consultation. So if you're virtual or over the phone, remind them that you do digital signatures, and that talk to them about what the agreement is, what their options are to get out of it, what they're tied to you for as far as the cost if they choose to go elsewhere, and all of those steps. Have that conversation about the details of that agreement before you send it over to them. So right now, before I go any further to the next slide, do you guys have any thoughts, comments, questions that you would like to share? You can just feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey, Danielle, I know you're shocked I'm talking. Um, when you're having that first consultation, I found that, especially with a lot of new buyers, that they hear, oh, I'm a veteran, so I can get this 100% no money down.
Mhm.
Um, that's and the lenders don't tend to, like you said, kind of give them the full picture. You really need to go ahead as a new agent, especially, and figure out to tell them that it's going to cost them $350 for a home inspection, 200 for a well, and those items have to be paid up front. Now, there's some negotiating tools where they can maybe get paid back at the end, but no, they have to have probably a good $3,000, $1,000 for earnest funds, another 2,000 for these inspections. So that's just something you want to make sure that FHA, VA, USDA loans, they might say they owe less money, but you've actually got money out of pocket. So that's just my 2 cents for the consultation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Valerie, for sharing that. I do think that's important when you're going over the main steps of a transaction and you get to like the contract part and due diligence. It's great to go ahead and bring that up then, like a what to expect type of thing, so that they are aware of the upcoming expenses. I'll tell you, recently I had that conversation with a recent buyer, and we still had an unexpected, even though it's now very expected in my wheel of like things to talk about. But we still had a $500 engineered plus a second inspection fee of $250 that the buyer was responsible for when it came to getting an engineered report for the mobile home. So um, just, do your best to try and know the transaction that's coming up and speak to what they can expect, so that you're not stuck showing them 20 homes, and when you finally find that perfect home, you realize they don't have the funds to do any of the due diligence, because that's going to kill it, and you've wasted time and you've wasted their time, and their expectations are burnt and yada yada, right? Okay, so moving on to the next slide, is setting up the subscription and showing them the homes. There are some things in between, like I said, that you're going to do from consultation and so forth. But um, I'm not really here to go into like all the dot loop things and all the documents that have to be included. That will be in another class. Okay, so when you schedule showings, be sure to confirm the time and location with the buyer and arrive early to prepare the home for their visit. During the showing, allow the buyers to explore the property at their own pace and provide them with any necessary information about the home. And after the showing, follow up with the buyer to answer any additional questions they may have and address any concerns. So, in that particular case, I did include some things on the right-hand side of this slide to bring with you to your showing. Um, when I set up showings, I try to do more than one house at a time. Like, let's wait, but in a really competitive market, you don't really have that leisure. So just kind of play with what you know your situation, you know your buyers, you've vetted them, you know what's going on in the market. So if you have to go one on one, fine. But I do always try to encourage them to drive by a property if at all possible, and check out the neighborhood, check out the distance to work or whatever, because it's super disappointing if, like, they walk up to a house and they've already made a decision that they don't want to see the home, yet you've asked the sellers to leave, you've spent time scheduling it, you took time on your own. So that's why I try to get them to go by and preview the area, whether it's a prestige area or a low income area or whatever the case is. You don't really speak to why, you just want them to go by, check out the neighborhood, see their time to commute and things like that. So if I have more than one showing scheduled, I like to put in the binder all of the buyers' property details, and maybe one picture, make sure it has one picture on the front of each listing. And then I put them in order after I've mapped our route. I put them in order, right, of how they're seeing it. And then I put a pin with it. And obviously there's a cover sheet that's got my picture and phone number and all these things on it. And then I, explain to them here, this is how we're going to see the houses today. All the details that you need to know about the home are on these sheets. I also have a detailed packet as well. But the purpose is for you to write notes, things that you love, things that you hate, because after we see 2, 3, 4, 6 houses today, it's going to get all jumbled up, and it's going to be important for you to have the information, not just what's available publicly, but your personal thoughts after you left a home. How did you feel about it? And I typically like to ask them to rate it like 1 to 10. If 10 is like you love it, and anything above 8, we're definitely considering writing an offer, things like that. So of course, that's how you get to create this process individually. Most of us already have it, but if you haven't and you want someone to kind of walk you through it, we have the materials at the office to help you get set up for that. I also like to include any of the seller's disclosures about the property, or if there's like a lead-based paint disclosure. I don't typically print like permits or anything that are already included in the listing, but I will make note of updates to the home. So I will do like a permit search, or make notes of anything that is in the realtor remarks. I highlight it on my copy so that when we're there, I get to share with them those details if they are shareable details. So remember that the realtor remarks are not, so the broker's full MLS sheet is not for the buyers. We are not allowed to share that with them, but you can have it on your possession. And it does show the history of the transaction, like when the property price has been adjusted and things like that. So it's really great to have all those details. And then any added information you need to on there in your own handwriting or whatever. Another thing I like to have is tax information. It will say usually in the listing, like how much their taxes are. And I think there's a queue there now where it says homestead or not. But if you're not sure, you need to check it. If there's other exemptions that are causing the taxes to be lower that may not apply to your buyer, it's important to let them know that as well. If the house has not been sold or anything like that in probably 5 or more years, it's important to discuss with them about how the taxes are going to change, especially if there's a major difference in value. Also consider bringing some measuring tape, toilet paper, bug spray, any of the things that you think you might need in a disaster. I mean, even a first aid kit if you fall or someone else falls. Like, think outside of the box, have those things on hand, be prepared. Also dress based on the property you are showing. If you are in heels that day, but you know you're showing a farm, I would highly recommend that you at least throw a pair of boots or another option for your whole outfit, or at least something different for your footwear in your vehicle that day. It's here or there how you do it, but I can't imagine if your heels are sinking or whatever the case is. I mean, if you're showing beachfront properties or lakefront properties and you're going to be walking out to the dock, likely you're going to want something that you can slip on and off easily. So just think about it in advance is all I'm suggesting. I did skip over the setting up subscriptions part because I felt like it was just something that I wanted to come back to. Setting up your subscriptions. Remember that as the more details that you put in the criteria, the smaller the circle it is that properties are going to show up. If someone tells you that they want a fenced property, I would not put that in the criteria, because it is likely going to exclude plenty of other really great options for them. And they won't see it in their emails because it doesn't have a fence. Keep in mind to discuss that with them. Discuss those type of things with them. Like, I know you want a fence, but I'm not going to exclude properties without fences, because if the property is great in any and every other way, I don't want you to miss it. You know what I'm saying? Remind them that your subscription is set up to show them properties however often you intend to show it to them, share it with them. So if you're doing it daily or weekly or whatever the case is, and that new changes to the listings will prompt the properties to come back into their subscription, right? So like price reductions, or if a listing agent changes the photo or changes the wording in it, which we know we all do when our listings go stale, if that happens, all of a sudden they're seeing it again and they may not understand why they're seeing some of the same properties. So just kind of help them understand how the system works for the subscriptions. Let them know that having the subscription is better than having a consumer-based filtered email, but if they want to do both, that's fine. Remind them that if they're getting emails from realtor.com, zillow.com, instead of reaching out to anyone on those sites, if it's not showing up in the MLS subscription feed that you're offering, for them to, hey, send it over to me and I will make sure I facilitate a showing or verify if it's still an active listing, because sometimes those sites don't update correctly. So that is all.
Danielle,
Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
when you said that note, also could a good thing is for when your buyers are out and they're looking at homes and they see a realtor that's on duty at a home and they go inside that home, make sure to let them know, to tell them I'm working with a realtor, or to contact your realtor first before you even go in, because I had a big doozy with that one, if you can remember when that happened.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. When you're in your consultation with them or at any point in time, reminding them that it's important for them to constantly share that they are represented in a transaction. So they are welcome to go to open houses without you. Try to discourage them from going to any big builders without you, because they like you to register in advance. If the buyer registers and they don't put your name down, you're done. You're not a part of it anymore. So there are very specific situations where you want them, just remind them that your job is to work for them. So if they're cruising down the street and there's a sign on the side of the road and they don't remember seeing the picture of that house in their emails, then take a picture of the house, take a picture of the street, take a picture of the sign, whatever it is, and send it to me. Tell them, send it to me. I will work it out. I will try and figure it out, and I will find out if that home is overpriced for you, or maybe it doesn't have the bedrooms that you need. Like, they don't know that by looking at the outside, right? But there's likely a reason why it wasn't sent in their email. So, but encourage them. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, sorry. Also, when I have those kind of buyers that I know are going to be driving around and doing, I'll even give them a couple of my business cards to say, please, if you're going into any of these open houses, just go ahead and give them my business card and say, if you have any questions, this is our agent or something like that. That way they know that I'm there representing them, but I give them the business cards. And you also have to tell buyers that you can sell anybody's listing anywhere in the state of Florida. They just they only think that you can sell your own listings a lot of times.
That's true. Another point, and I hate to piggyback to the consultation, but as we go, there might be some things like this. But another point to be had is that, when you're consulting with your clients, is to remind them that your services, outside of a buyer's agreement, are free to them. And so you do all this work for an outcome. So I like to very easily and you got to be careful. You don't want to be too forward with it, but talk to them about, like, I do all these things for you. I want to do all these things for you. So please do me the favor of allowing people to know that you're already represented, and give me the chance to continue to represent you so that I don't get forced out of the transaction. And a lot of times you can tell them, some past clients didn't even realize that because of something that they did, I was no longer able to move forward and helping them, because they registered at a Pulte showing, you know what I'm saying? Or with a Pulte representative or, an Adams Homes or whatever. And just give them a past experience so that it doesn't feel like you're like, I want to get paid, so don't screw me. You know what I mean? But be forward enough to share with them, but also just be gentle and kind about the presentation of it. All right. Anything else? All right. Writing offers. Just because we have templates in Florida Realtors and in dotloop doesn't mean that those contracts are foolproof. There are many different ways that you can misrepresent a deal, kill a deal, or even lose money on behalf of your client if you are not thorough and careful about how you write these contracts. You absolutely have to know what goes where, when it goes there, how it affects your transaction. It is very critical. Okay, very critical. This is why our office is such a stickler for pairing you with a mentor if you haven't already been with a mentor or somebody to help you through this, because it doesn't do you any justice to let you spend individual time trying to figure out what's right or wrong on your own when there are plenty of experienced agents that can guide you. It doesn't benefit your client, and in some ways, it could really be detrimental to the transaction. Okay. So, some of the tips I put is be thorough, make sure that you check, double check, all that. Make sure that you speak with all the decision makers. Think about all the things. If you're sharing information with one, again, you've got to share the exact information with the other. So essentially, it's best to make sure that you have those conversations all inclusive, but it's not always the way it happens. So if you share details about the contract or the offer or deadlines or anything like that with one, make sure you completely do that again, and also get their input. Like, so and so, is this type of escrow deposit something you're comfortable with? Because we can't write the contract and then you guys be like, $5,000, like we can't afford that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't do that. So you make sure you're double checking like all those details. Inspection periods on the contract, include all the disclosures, addendums, and check your contingency periods. I just realized there's a typo on that, but check your contingency periods and make sure everything is covered, right? When I say disclosures and addendums, look inside MLS. If the agent is really savvy, they have probably put the seller's disclosure already signed by the seller in there. And if their home is lead based or whatever, they've already included the lead based paint disclosure if it's old enough that has been signed by the seller. If there is an HOA or a condo association, they hopefully have provided you with all the docs and covenants and even a pre-signed HOA addendum. So that is the prettiest listing ever, right? For us experienced agents, like we want it all. But don't forget to go there and check for them. How much time I've wasted that I have added to the loop blank versions of it, had to search up all the information for an HOA to go on that. And then for them to have said, it was in the paper clips, my seller doesn't want to sign it again, have your buyer sign the one. And their information is more accurate because it's provided by the listing agent anyway. So double check the paper clips, or if there's nothing included in the paper clip, but you know that those documents are usually needed or available, request them in advance. Request them in advance so that when you present that offer, you can just present it all at once. It's got everything in nice and pretty. And when they accept it, they can accept it and you have a contract package that's inclusive instead of multiple different files that you have to remember to share with the lender and share with title and so forth. Use professionalism in your email communications. Good gravy. It's probably the most annoying thing for me to receive a see attached offer email from another buyer if I'm a listing. However, it's also super annoying to have like a 4-page paragraph or a 4-paragraph paged email, from someone with every single life experience going on. So kind of take that into consideration. Be cordial, but maybe be brief. Include details about your buyers if necessary that, sell them. That's the whole point. My buyers, they love it. Their family enjoyed being there. That kind of stuff, that's great. Some listing agents are going to take it to their sellers and some are not. If there's multiple offers, it may or may not get shared. But just sharing in there, they're super qualified. I've already spoke with the lender. Please feel free to verify their qualifications with the lender. Those type of things, they're great to do. Just, keep it, like I said, to me, I recommend cordial but brief. What else did I put? When writing a real estate offer, there are a few tips to keep in mind. Make sure to include all relevant information, such as property address, purchase price, and any contingencies. Be clear and concise in your language, avoiding any unnecessary or confusing wording. It is also important to be timely with your offer, as real estate market can move quickly. I think what I was including there is if you're adding additional terms, be clear and careful how you word that, because sometimes it could be the difference between using will versus may. Like, this person will do this or this person may do this. May means totally different things than the person will do something. So just be careful how you word things. If in doubt on a contract, have another agent overlook it. I mean, there have been plenty of times that I've had Vicky, who is my mentor, or another agent, if it's a complicated offer, even it's seasoned and several years into real estate, I will have someone review it because maybe it's just overwhelming. Maybe I'm just not sure if I've included everything. So some examples of things that you would add in the additional terms are if the seller is to pay closing cost. If so, how much and what do those that credit apply to? Is it just towards prepaids? Is it prepaids and closing? If the seller is going to do something and they've already included it in the listing, if they are leaving the washer and dryer, you could put that up on the first page, or you could just add it in the additional terms. So there's a lot of different things. Any comments about writing offers?
Hey, Danielle, you just said something about if the seller is paying closing costs. I had a bad experience years ago when I put closing costs, and to me that meant the buyer's closing costs, anything. But the other agent was like, oh no, that does not mean financing fees and prepaids and all of those. So I always make sure that I write in there to include all financial, finance costs, prepaids, and other, closing costs that buyer may incur. So you just kind of need to be detailed on that, unless it's specifically just to prepaids or something. But and having a number up to is usually a good way to word it as well. That way the seller be $30,000. They see that it's only going to be up to 3% or up to $5,000.
Correct. And also making sure that you've already asked the lender what the allotment is needed and what is the max amount for that loan,
Yes.
because it varies per loan. Any other comments or questions, even from others?
I'll chime in. I did just have a deal where Vicky made, not Vicky, I'm sorry, it was Angela. She made sure that we worded it correct. We had to go back and put it on a seller's addendum because we hadn't put it on the contract that the sellers were offering up to $2,500 towards closing costs. So that wasn't towards like fees or anything like that. But we had to make sure we got it in there. So we didn't put it on the contract, but we did go back and put it on the seller's addendum and made sure we worded it correctly.
I think that's a great point. Just because it's included in the MLS work, it doesn't mean it's contractual. So you could lose that. So it was a great catch and good job. Thank you for sharing. All right. Next slide is due diligence. That's a loaded slide. And I'm sure, and I'm hoping there'll be some comments added. So due diligence is the traditional form of the due diligence in the very beginning is inspections and negotiations in my mind. So just be very aware of the type of home and the type of loan that you are working with and that you are under contract for. And remember that inspections in this first initial period include all of the inspections, okay? A home inspection, a termite inspection, a well inspection, even water, test, septic inspection if it applies. If it's a mobile home, any engineered inspections and certifications, the 4-point reports and wind mitigation reports. So the reason why I included the 4-point and the wind mitigation reports in there is because back a couple of years ago, 4-points and wind mitigations were additionally added as a fee. And in that case, if there were additional fees, and some inspectors may still have it that way, I did not want to pay a fee for the report if one or the other was only needed for the insurance, right? Also, if we were going to be doing any type of repairs after the initial review of the inspection, I wanted to make sure that the 4-point report didn't need to be updated because sometimes there are additional fees for updating those reports, right? So, most of the time, inspectors that I've ran into are doing all inclusive, and that's fine. So just be very aware of what you need out of the inspector and share that with them. Another point that I'd like to say is that remember that any negotiation, so you have to have the home and all the inspections done, the information back to you and the client for review, and have time for any quotes or anything like that that needs to be done, or any negotiations and signing of documents, all within that due diligence period. I had a transaction where the other agent, the buyer's agent, actually argued with me that all they had to do was have the inspection and that we could negotiate afterwards the terms of any repairs after the deadline. And I was like, I think you need to call legal hotline because that's not correct. And I would feel bad that you may misrepresent your clients. I wasn't really trying to advocate that the buyer's agent needed to fight with me about anything that needed to be done. I just was following up. Hey, we have 2 days left in due diligence. Just wanted to see how inspections went and if there was anything that we needed to discuss or if everything's good, right? Because I don't want to imply that something's wrong as a listing agent, but I want to make sure that, we don't miss deadlines and stuff like that. So I was just trying to be cordial. And then she made that comment to me. And I just highly recommended that she speak with her broker or a legal hotline and verify her understanding, and ended up extending due diligence because she didn't know that all of that needed to take place during that period. And that's why she was kind of slacking, I guess I would say. So we did grant her some grace and so forth. So anyways, that's just a misconception I wanted to share. When agreeing on repairs, be thorough in your wording on your addendums about who's responsible for the repair, what type of vendor will do the work, and the deadline for it to be completed. And the reason I say that, examples like the house needs to be repiped. So then seller agrees to have a licensed plumber repipe the whole home with this product, to also include permitting and final inspections through the county, to be completed by such and such date, which is obviously not the same as your closing date, for the opportunity for the buyer to have it re-inspected. So that's just an example of how I would write it. And of course, I'm just kind of doing it off the top of my head. So I may actually have included some other things. Know what inspections need to be done because additional trips later will cost money to do that. Yep. So I already said that. clients coming to inspections. You're the buyer's agent, right? All buyers want any opportunity, usually, to be back at the house, to walk around, to measure for their couch, to see if they're going to replace that carpet that they said they didn't want, but they're willing to accept. And now they're looking at it like, they may have just missed some things, and they're just like, overall, in the first showing, they definitely love the house and they've evaluated it and now they're there. And then sometimes the buyers are just super particular and they want to know every little thing that that home inspector is finding. So my comment and my suggestion is, if you have your buyers who want to be there, they are entitled to be there. You have to be there with them. So the way you handle that is, would you like to attend the home inspection? Oh, well, yeah, I would love to, but okay, well, that's great. You're entitled to be there. Are you going to go for the whole home inspection, or would you like to be there for just like the final walkthrough and summary? Well, I don't know. What do you think? I always say that I recommend them come an hour after it's scheduled. If it's a small house, then maybe 30 minutes, but just kind of varies. And just say, I just recommend you come at the end and get the summary, because obviously we don't want to be there to distract the home inspector by having conversations with him. And we don't want him to miss something because we keep interrupting him. So unless there's something you need to do specifically at the house, then I recommend coming at the end. But please let me know when you're going to be there, because I have to be there to represent you. So you just want to make sure you're very clear on, like, if you change your mind and you decide you want to go, you got to tell me, and you can't just show up and walk around the property, have conversations with the sellers if they're there. And, if they're not there, just be roaming around the house without any representation on, you just can't do that. So make sure you're very clear with your clients about that. And tell them that if they are there, they will receive an in-person summary at the end. So whether or not you have to attend the home inspection, if your clients aren't, is really a personal choice. I do try to get, if it's occupied, if there are some things I'm concerned with, if it's at all possible that I can make it happen, I try to go to at least the final part of the inspection or the beginning of the inspection to make the introductions, walk through the property about any concerns my buyers may have with the home inspector, and just have those conversations and say, hey, please give me a call with the summary if you get a chance, if I'm not able to stay or anything like that. During this due diligence period, I always recommend to know, even though the survey isn't something that has to be or even should be scheduled during your original due diligence or the initial due diligence, go ahead and find out from the title company if they order it, or if it's going to be your responsibility to make sure it gets done. Because after due diligence and appraisal, you're hot on to needing that survey done, and you just don't want to forget that it's your responsibility, or forget to verify that the title office has already completed it. That's kind of all I got for this slide, but I'd love to hear from everybody else. I'm sure there are some situational things.
Hey, just when you have your buyers at the at any showing with the inspections, or just to be showing, and I know this sounds mean, but really do your best to keep the buyer and the seller from talking too much about the deal and about, oh yeah, I'll just go ahead and leave you that couch over there. Put it in writing. What they say between themselves, the husband said it with the other husband, but the wife was like, are you kidding me? That was Aunt Josie's couch. There's no way in Hades I'm giving that up. And it becomes a big deal at closing table. Trust me, it's happened. So it's hard to try and teach your buyers that, because they think you're trying to keep them from something, but it's really in their best interest not to have issues at the closing table, to kind of keep the two parties separated.
I agree. Also, keep your buyers from driving by the property like stalkers all the time, waiting for the sellers to walk out by mistake. hard no, don't do it, don't stop. But the thing is that you don't want to constantly be like at your buyers about what they can't do. So in the event that they're coming, then like when they arrive, you're like, hey, how are you doing? Da, 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 da. Okay, so remember, the home inspector has already got started. We'll wait for him to take a break and I'll introduce you guys. But let's just let him have, his space because we don't want him to make mistakes or miss something. And then also say, the sellers are home. Sometimes the sellers aren't even home, but if the sellers are home, they're of course, entitled to be here as well. But let's try to just stay with like formalities and not discuss anything about the transaction or the home at this time. Because like we're just not really sure how far we're going to go. And we don't want to make any comments or assumptions and then things change later, however you want to say it, but just kind of give them that. But if they're not even going, like that conversation doesn't even need to take place. So it's kind of like just gauge the situation. Don't over inform them on things that don't even pertain, but be aware and be able to definitely bring it up when it needs to be. Anyone else have a question about it or a do or don't type of thing that they would like to offer? Okay. If you guys think of anything, you're welcome to chime in. Appraisals. Again, remember I just went through some of the basic things, so I'm not going through all the tedious things, but appraisals are a very big part of a transaction on almost every transaction. If for some reason your buyer is waiving an appraisal, which happened a lot a couple of years ago, because they have, excess funds to provide or whatever the case is, then that's one thing. But keep in mind that there are some transactions that will include an appraisal contingency on top of their financial contingency. So be aware of when that is necessary. An example would be you have a conventional loan client, it is getting appraised. They are putting down more than 5%. I think there's a variable, but I want to say it's like more than 10%, but they're putting down a substantial amount of money. If, just so you're clear, the financial contingency, if you're unaware, only covers the appraisal meeting the loan amount. Okay. It doesn't mean that the appraisal has to meet the contract amount, right? So in most cases, if it's an FHA or whatever, there's other addendums that kind of protect that it has to meet purchase price, right? If it's FHA or VA or USDA. But if it's conventional, there are no safe havens there. So if you're putting a substantial, I would just say if you're doing conventional with a lump sum of anything more than 5% down, just top it with an appraisal contingency that the home has to appraise at contract price. So what that does is it prevents the seller from trying to not negotiate if it comes in. Let's say $5,000 is the difference of it. And the seller wants to argue that it came in at loan value. You're putting so much money down. When a buyer buys a house, they want to know that the price that they're paying, regardless versus loan and cash, is the value of the home. Nobody wants to overpay. Again, I just seen a typo, so I'll be correcting these slides. Always know when the appraisal is taking place. I wouldn't stalk or harass the appraiser, but usually they do schedule it with the listing agent and not the buyer's agent. If they can't contact one, they'll contact the other. I do try to be present, but it's almost impossible because appraisers don't want you to be present. So they want to be able to just unlock the super box and go in. If it's occupied, that's like your grace right there. Oh no, I have to coordinate it. I need to be present. My sellers, or the client wants someone present or whatever. So just try to be present if you can, but be respectful of their space. Remember, ethically, you cannot have certain conversations with appraisers. But if I was a listing agent and I was showing up to an appraisal or working with an appraiser, I would want them to have all of the comparables in favor of the price that is contracted, right? So I would email that to them, or just offer it and ask if they want it, or leave it on the counter for them with your business card. Since you're representing a buyer in this particular case, it can work the same way. If the buyers are adamant that they want this house and you're pretty confident that it is, a good value, then, and the sellers are just not going to budge, then represent your client's best interest and make sure that you're communicating what you see as comps and comparables for the appraiser. Be professional to them, be polite, because they can be very difficult to work with, but then they can be great. So just remember that you will run into these appraisers on other transactions, just like you work with other agents. So you want them to feel pleasant when they see your name. So don't tick them off, I guess would be the case. Negotiations after a value is established, right? So there's always the case where an appraisal comes in under contract price, and you have to now communicate with the listing agent what the value is. And you now have to talk about how we can save the deal, right? The biggest thing is remembering and educating your buyers that the sellers don't have to reduce. In most cases, it's in their best interest. If it's an FHA or a VA appraisal, then that means it's going to hold its weight with any other FHA or VA contract that they take. If they're like, well, we could get more for cash, and then they'd rather go back on the market, then there really might not be anything you can do. But just kind of communicate the process with your client as a buyer's agent. Let them know what you're going to do on their behalf to try and fix the situation. A lot of times the buyers get that value before the buyer's agent does. And they are going to be like, wow, it's $10,000 less. That's great. We get to tell them that they have to drop the price. It's just not that easy. So, proceed carefully and graciously when you're talking to the other agent. The goal is to keep the transaction moving forward, right? Nobody wants to get through, even the buyer doesn't want to have already paid for an appraisal and all that list of inspections, right? And then it just fall apart. So if there's a way to communicate and work it out, then, you can do so, and make sure that all those terms get put in writing and are executed fully by all parties and are presented to everybody, essentially the sellers, the lender, and the title office. Okay. If the appraisal comes in over value or at value even, and there is nothing to really discuss, the seller's agent, if the seller's agent is like me, we want to know what the value is. I want to know how close to the listing price or contract price I was when I did my comparables. It's a great way to educate on how, like if it came in 30,000 over, that's great for the buyer. There's nothing I can do as a listing agent. I may not even tell my sellers, but now I know I actually probably could have priced it higher, right? So I like that information as a listing agent, but just remember that you are not privy to share that information with the other side of the transaction unless you have asked the buyers first. And I would recommend asking them via email or text so you have something in writing. It's not your information to share. Anybody have any comments? Nothing? Are you guys sleeping? Okay.
We're listening. You're doing such a great job.
Well,
I'm trying it once. It's a miracle.
I'm glad you guys think I'm doing a good job. It's just I'm so used to so much communication. So I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything and that I'm offering really good tips. So, and I know that I'm not the only one to offer these tips. So
Don't forget though, FHA, VA, USDA, the appraiser's job is not to do the inspections, but to look for things that they know their loan people don't want. Also, if they do have to come back out and paint, honestly, I've had to go outside and scrape off the chipped paint on a wall, a 2x2 area, repainted. It's not a pretty job, by the way. And then we had to pay the appraiser, I think it was 150 or $250 to go back out, even though I said, hey, I'll take a picture. Still had to charge my client for me taking the picture, doing the painting, and saying, yes, it's okay now.
Yes.
So that's fees that you just remembering. Danielle, I'm glad you said that, because even though I've had it happen multiple times, I don't remember to tell my buyers that. So thank you. I'm going to put that in my tools box now.
Good. I'm glad I was able to share. Yes, that is a great tip that, under those particular loan programs, there are some things that the appraisers are looking for. Once you get really versed with what products are asking for what things, I think the biggest tool to remember is you're probably going to see these things way up front. For the most part, if you have a really good eye, I would say if you find that this is the house for your client, take a moment as the agent to fine tooth the house and look at the bottom of the exterior doors for any kind of wood rot. Are the stairs to the mobile home detached? Things like that. The paint chipping, windows being cracked. Even if it's a window that's cracked that you guys didn't negotiate during your regular due diligence, for particular loans, they may not allow for it. And now all of a sudden, you guys are renegotiating repairs. So try to be the agent that's on top of it and forward thinking. And of course, then if you can take care of those things and you can already say, well, FHA, my buyer was willing to accept this, but FHA says this, and this. So would the seller be willing to take care of it so it's not flagged on the appraisal? You know what I mean? So you're just getting ahead of the game if you can. And I thank you for bringing that up, Valerie. I didn't think about that. All right. Also, if you are a newer agent or if you are unfamiliar with some of the criteria to meet an FHA standard, a VA standard, or a USDA standard loan, we have that documentation in our office and are happy to provide it to you. Just ask your mentor or your ASM and they can get it to you. All right, headed to the closing table, and we are almost at an hour, so I'm going to try and wrap this up as quickly as possible. But always refer to your task or your checklist to see and be very thorough on making sure that everything has been conquered, that you're not missing anything that is vital to get to closing, right? Review your title commitments when they come in, which is always at the very end of the transaction. I think sometimes it's 15 days, the other times it's 5, depending on what kind of contract you're in, as far as the default dates. So usually by that time, you guys are through surveys and you're through appraisals and you guys are like, yeah, we're just waiting on that clear to close. But don't forget to look at your title commitment, right? Let's see, communicate all details of what to expect with your clients. Okay, so when you get your clear to close, it's very exciting. I always want you to portray that excitement to the client, right? It's not as exciting for us as real estate agents because we hear clear to close all the time. I mean, yes, that does mean cha-ching, you're about to get paid and all that hard work is about to pay off. But remember that this is a very exciting time for your clients. In some cases, this is their first home, right? Or maybe they've been through bankruptcy and all this turmoil previously and they are recovering from it. And this is a new way for them to, experience moving on and moving forward. And so it is exciting. So be excited for them and cheer them on. I'm like, we did it. We're here. It's super exciting. Don't let the mundane part of real estate bore you, if that makes sense, what I'm trying to say, make you boring to your client. So make sure that you're explaining the purpose of the walkthrough when you're scheduling your final walkthrough, and always, always, always complete the final walkthrough in a vacant home if possible, unless there's negotiated things that are being left, and always, always, always prior to signing any closing documents. Okay. Recently I have experienced that our Florida standards they're new. They are new and they are different to people who are coming into Florida, right? So if they're an experienced buyer, they may be not used to doing a walkthrough prior. They may think that they don't actually take keys at closing. There are some things that are totally different. Close of escrow means different things in different states. So be super careful that you are just remembering to say the same things, even if you think, oh, I've already said this, they already know this, they're an experienced buyer. Just say it anyways. Make sure. You never know what the other agent that represented them, even another Florida agent, didn't tell them. So it's just talk to them. In your walkthrough, I always like to explain the purpose of it as we are just here to make sure that all the things that we agreed to are completed and that the house has been left in a way that it was expected to and contractually the way it was supposed to be left, right? We are looking for holes that were not there or damages that you're going to now be responsible for when you close. You're making sure that they have all their personal items, including personal items that they think they're leaving for the buyer because they're doing them a favor. Baloney. Don't let that happen. I've had people leave twin beds because they thought that because the buyer had so many kids that they could use the extra twin bed. The twin bed was broken and it was a heavy duty wood one, and it postponed closing for 2 days because the seller didn't have the ability to get it out. That's really the reason why the seller left it. They were just being jerks, right? So you're looking for certain things, you're there to benefit them. I've also been the listing agent that had to take my heels off and dump out things because I didn't educate my seller or I didn't communicate. Like if the seller is wanting to leave things, then that part should have been communicated. Hey, we'd like to leave paint cans. Is it okay if we leave it in the right side of the garage? Just a couple. They're empty, but it's got the color codes or whatever. Or we have some flooring or whatever. Or, hey, we have this, I don't know what it's called, shelving unit, right? And it's really heavy duty and we realized we don't have a use for it. So we wanted to know if the buyer wanted it. Yes, that's absolutely great. Please leave it. Get it in writing that the buyer and the seller agreed to leave it, because last thing you want is the buyer thought that the seller was leaving it and they were happy about it, and then the seller changed their mind and sold it to somebody else. Like there's a lot of chaos that can happen, but the walkthrough purpose is to make sure that the house is in the condition, an acceptable condition, that the buyers would like it and are willing to accept it prior to finalizing any documents. When you're scheduling your closing date, please be courteous and schedule and coordinate with all parties the time and date convenient for all. Essentially, as buyers representatives, we want to be sure that we're courteous to our clients and our schedule so that we can connect with the title office, right? But the seller needs to sign documents too, so you kind of want to communicate that. Even if the seller comes in advance, that's fine. They don't have to be there. And that's changed so many times. It used to be sometimes the buyers and the sellers would be in the same room. And if you wanted it to be separated, you had to request it. And COVID changed that quick. You know what I mean? So anyways, be courteous. And then sometimes the lender, the loan originator, they've worked really hard. They'd like to show up and show appreciation to the buyer as well at closing. So communicate that with them as well. Obviously, the back end of processing and the closing department, they know when it's happening, but just, build that rapport and that graciousness with all the parties involved and, schedule accordingly. Beyond closing is my last slide. Before I continue, do you have any comments about closing and getting to the closing table?
Hey, Danielle, real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Make sure that your sellers know, and I know this is, but sellers should always know that they have to leave, and it's in our contract, if I'm not mistaken, that the home is left in broom clean condition. And that's what you also tell your buyers, that it is going to be in broom clean condition. I know you left your home up in New Jersey immaculate. You had the walls all repainted and washed and professionally done. That is not what's going to happen here, that unless it was written in the contract. It is broom clean condition. That includes the refrigerator and stove and microwave. and the ceiling fans with the dusty bunnies. Also, just make sure that they are understanding that until the lender funds that closing, which means that the seller is receiving their check, that they do not get a key to that house. So even if they have the U-Haul with grandma and the 3 dogs sitting in the parking lot waiting to go into their new home, if the lender hasn't funded, they don't get the key to that house, or all documents aren't signed. I've had that happen, and I almost had cops called on me. Lesson
So I
learned.
believe, and this will be a great point for us to verify after this class, but I recently feel like I was a part of a class that included that actually closing is complete when the title has received all funds,
Well, that's what I mean. I'm sorry.
not the seller.
No, right, but once
Okay.
once title gets funds, then yes, you are
Okay.
correct. It is title gets funds, and therefore then everybody gets their funds. But yes, you're correct. I just
Okay.
used it as seller. So,
Yeah, no,
sorry.
it's perfect. Thank you.
But
I just
same-
wanted to make sure that it was recorded the right way.
No, you're right. It is when
Okay.
the lending company has all documents signed, approved, and funding is at the title company or wherever you're closing.
Right. Perfect. I appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you for that correction. That's old
Yeah.
school coming out in me.
Yeah, no problem. And it is a misconception sometimes, even for the seller might be like, I seen them with their U-Haul over there and I didn't receive my money until Monday. Well, you have a bone to pick with the title office that you picked and chose to work with because, our lender provided funds at 3 o'clock on Friday and you should have actually received your money. Now, sometimes it really isn't anybody's fault. It could just be, wire transfer didn't take place or it was a late closing or whatever. So, obviously we want to be courteous, but yes, you're right. Okay, so beyond closing, I'm just going to read through this slide. It's probably going to prompt me to talk off key, but what to do as a realtor after closing, right? So as a realtor, there are several things you can do after closing to ensure a positive experience for your clients and to build your reputation as a professional in the industry. I think it's also a big deal to remember that as you're encountering positive experiences through the transaction, to kind of make mental notes of all the things that went really well and kind of summarize that at the closing table or briefly afterwards in a conversation when maybe you're asking for a review. Like, hey, I just wanted to check in again. I'm super grateful that you guys gave me this opportunity to work with you because it's such a great experience to be a part of your first home buying process or whatever. Remember that it was easy to get through this and this, and I was just hoping that you could leave a review or a testimonial that I could use for marketing purposes or whatever, right? So kind of keep note of those things. Bringing in closing appreciation gift or sending a thank you note or even a gift to your client afterwards, it's not required. A lot of people say, hey, I did a job, I got paid for it, so why am I giving them a gift? Well, the gift is there to help them remember to choose you again, that you are thankful, because remember that even if you're getting paid for the task and the services that you offered, they didn't have to choose you, especially as a buyer's agent, right? They didn't have to choose you. They probably had a lot of people to choose from. So the fact that they chose you is a benefit, and you want to have them choose you again as a listing agent, maybe in 2 to 5 years or even longer, or you want them to be able to be like, hey, my buyer's agent, they were great, and look at this cool gift they gave me, or whatever the case is. It doesn't have to be grand. It can be budgeted for you specifically and via your transaction. It could be a small thank you note, and it doesn't actually have to have a gift. It could be a thank you note at closing or a thank you note mailed to them. It can be gift cards. It could be their favorite wine or liquor or whatever. It could be a lot of things. Those ideas, go crazy, get creative. I mean, in the very beginning, my big thing was I wanted their home to feel homey when they arrived back after closing. So I used to leave either a personalized or just a cutesy welcome mat and a wreath or a flower arrangement on their front door. And I used 3M tape so it didn't damage anything. And that was put my little card in there, and I would just give them hugs at closing and say, I'm super excited. Let me know if you like your closing gift when you get home, yada, yada. Right. And they loved it. And then I kind of evolved in some other things. So just be creative, put a personal touch on it. Right. And think about your client when you're doing that. I know Vicky has in the past, when they've had moving parties or a housewarming or something, she has funded like, pizza or whatever, or left a cooler with drinks or, so I mean, there's just a lot of different varieties of things you can do. Stay in touch with your clients by sending them market updates that affect their property. That is a big thing. Like the market's ever changing, and in Florida, it's always going up. It might go down for a little bit, but it's always going to go back up. So you want them to stay aware of what their home value is on their property, because you never know when life circumstances are going to throw them into like, oh, my husband just took a job 2 years after we closed on it, and so now we're relocating to a whole nother county. I wonder what my house is worth. Well, oh, that's right, my realtor sent me an email that told me how much it was. Right, you want to be top of mind. So definitely use your KV Core. Or if you don't want to use KV Core, which I can't imagine why you wouldn't, use like HomeBot or something like that. Check in periodically to see how they're doing. Send thank you notes don't forget to call your people. But the big thing I wanted to emphasize is send thank you notes and text or email to all the people that you worked with. Remember that you will likely work with them again. And if they did a good job, you want to tell them that, because we all like to be told that we were great to work with, right? And even if they didn't do a good job, sometimes that makes them strive to do better. So be that agent that's lifting and encouraging and thanking people. Be the agent that people are like, oh, Angie or Valerie, they're at Bricks, and they're an amazing team to work with. Everybody is so professional and they always do what they're supposed to do. Or I remember working with Tyra or Mario or anybody. Like, you want that, right? You want that feeling when they see your name. And so lenders, title agents, even though they did the job they were hired to do, show your appreciation. It doesn't have to be a gift, just a call or a text, a note card. I love handwritten notes. They're super easy to do and pretty inexpensive. So, and then don't forget to post all over social media about your closing. And when you do, don't forget to tag all the parties involved. Make sure you've asked permission. If it's your clients, they may not want to be included. They may not want their photos shared. So be careful about that. You don't want to piss them off after you've done a great job. But don't forget to use social media to share not only that you did a great job, but that you worked with great people and that your clients are happy, right? Like, you're not just sharing on social media to be like, hey, I just cut a check. Look at my check. That's not really the goal, but you want people to see that you're a producing agent and that people are pleased with your work. That's all I got, guys. Any comments about anything in working with a buyer in the process of doing so?
All buyers are different. No buyer is going to be the same. So just because it worked for that person, even if it's the same budget, same lender, it's a totally different contract, totally different human. So don't ever get flustered and call us. We are always here to pitch ideas and work with you. And I'm so excited about the new team in Ocala. I'm jealous.
I know. I'm extremely jealous too. I'm all lonely out here. But big things are coming for all areas. And there's been a tremendous amount of growth in our office in general. And what I am so proud of whenever I talk about to people here in Lakeland about our office is that we truly don't recruit. I mean, we do word of mouth, like, hey, you don't like your office? Well, come over here and let's just talk about it, right? But we're not putting all over social media. I mean, I kind of am now just because like I got to, but I mean, we're not like out there calling everybody who just got their license or hassling the top producers at other brokerages. Cause like if you're a top producer at our office, you've received those calls and those emails from the other offices trying to haggle you over, right? So like we have grown because of the product that we offer, which is goodness and wholesome and we are a team, and we truly want everybody on our team to be successful. And, you know, it's a competitive market, and we all want to make money and we all want to grow, but we do it in a way that everybody has their own time and place to shine. And we hope that we can help facilitate that. And so I'm really proud to be able to say that about our office. So anyhow, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. I know it was a long class. I hope it was informative and that you can take it on in your transactions. And I will, of course, be uploading this to YouTube. So y'all have a great day.
All right, have a good one. See you later.
Thanks, Mario. Bye.
Have an awesome day.
Thanks for joining, Alicia.
All right, have a good one, Danielle.
Bye,
Thank you.
Tara.